Welcome to San Academy Pallikaranai, Class 6 Social Science. Happy day, students. We are going to learn our next chapter from history, chapter number 7. Name of the chapter is Ashoka, the emperor who gave up war. Topics to be covered: a very big kingdom, an empire. How are empires different from kingdoms? Ruling the empire, Ashoka, a unique ruler and his war in Kalinga, Ashoka's Dhamma. A very big kingdom, an empire. The lions that we see on our notes and coins have a long history. They were carved in stone and placed on top of a massive stone pillar at Sarnath. Ashoka was one of the greatest rulers known to history, and on his instructions, inscriptions were inscribed on pillars as well as on rock surfaces. Before we find out what was written in these inscriptions, let us see why this kingdom was called as an empire. The empire that Ashoka ruled was founded by his grandfather Chandragupta Maurya more than 2300 years ago. Chandragupta Maurya was supported by a wise man named Chanakya or Kautliya. Many of Chanakya's ideas were written down in a book called Arthashastra. There were several cities in the empire. These included the capital Pataliputra, Taxila and Ujjain. Taxila was a gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, while Ujjain lay on the route from north to south India. Merchants, officials, and craftspersons probably lived in these cities. In other areas, there were villages of farmers and herders. In some areas, such as Central India, there were forests where people gathered forest produce and hunted animals for food. People in different parts of the empire spoke different languages. They probably ate different kinds of food and wore different kinds of clothes as well. Difference between empires and kingdoms. Empires are larger than kingdoms and need to be protected by comparatively big armies. Ruler of an empire is called as an emperor, while ruler of a kingdom is called a king. Emperors need more resources than a king, as their ruling area is larger than that of a kingdom. Emperors need a large number of officials to collect taxes in comparison to kings. Ruling the empire. As the empire was so large, different parts were ruled differently. The area around Pataliputra was under the direct control of the emperor. This meant that officials were appointed to collect taxes from farmers, herders, craftspersons, and traders who lived in villages and towns in the area. Officials also punished those who disobeyed the ruler's orders. Many of these officials were given salaries. Messengers went to and fro, and spies kept a watch on the officials. And of course, the emperor survived them all. With the help of members of the royal family and senior ministers, the emperor also supervised them all. There were other areas or provinces. Each of these were ruled from a provincial capital such as Taxila or Ujjain. Although there were some amount of control from Pataliputra and royal princes were often sent as governors, local customs and rules were probably followed. Besides these, there were vast areas between these centers. Here, the Mauryas tried to control roads and rivers, which were important for transport, and to collect whatever resources were available as tax and tribute. For example, the Arthashastra tells us that the northwest was important for blankets and South India for its gold and precious stones. It is possible that these resources were collected as tribute. There were also the forested regions. People living in these areas were more or less independent but may have been expected to provide elephants, timber, honey, and wax to Mauryan officials. Ashoka, a unique ruler. The most famous Mauryan ruler was Ashoka. He was the first ruler who tried to take his message to the people through inscriptions. Most of Ashoka's inscriptions were in Prakrit language and were written in the Brahmi script. Ashoka's war in Kalinga. Kalinga is the ancient name of coastal Orissa. Ashoka fought a war to conquer Kalinga. However, he was so horrified when he saw the violence and bloodshed that he decided not to fight any more wars. He is the only king in the history of the world who gave up conquest after winning a war. Ashoka's Dhamma. Ashoka's Dhamma did not involve worship of a god or performance of sacrifice. He felt that just as a father tries to teach his children, he had a duty to instruct his subjects. He was also inspired by the teachings of Buddha. There were a number of problems that troubled him. People in the empire followed different religions, and this sometimes led to conflict. Animals were sacrificed, slaves and servants were ill treated. Besides, there were quarrels in families and amongst neighbors. Ashoka felt it was his duty to solve these problems, so he appointed officials known as the Dhamma Mahamatta who went from place to place teaching people about Dhamma. Besides, Ashoka got his messages inscribed on rocks and pillars, instructing his officials to read his message to those who could not read it themselves. Ashoka also sent messengers to spread ideas about Dhamma to other lands such as Syria, Egypt, Greece, and Sri Lanka. He built roads, dug wells, and built rest houses. Besides, he arranged for medical treatment for both human beings and animals. That's all about this chapter. Thank you.